Hi everyone and welcome to Arts Alive. It's my pleasure today, my real pleasure, to welcome Barney Zeitz, who is a local artist, that being Martha's Vineyard primarily, where you live, and originally a Fall River guy, BMC Durfee High School, and all that good stuff. So welcome to the show, and we have in front of us, I'm sure people are wondering what these pieces are. So why don't we start by talking about how you got involved in the arts and coming out of Durfee. Anybody in particular there that put you in this path, or how did you kind of find a path?
It found me, really, to be honest, because I went to UMass Amherst for school, environmental design and city planning, but it was really the 69 to 71 and the Vietnam War, just everything was confusing and it was a very upsetting time, and so I really didn't know what I was doing, so I left school and I started teaching myself how to do stained glass. And I don't even know why. I walked by some store and saw a handcrafted little bottle or something with painted stains, and you glue the lead on, so I started doing that. And then I bought a book on how to do the real thing, and I started doing stained glass. And I moved to the vineyard, and
was that more or less the end of the formal as we would know it education?
I didn't go back to school.
No,
I was just 2 years of UMass, and I went in Denmark to a study overseas program, and then I never went back to school. You know, so I taught myself the glasswork from a book, and I experimented and had a kiln, in a studio I was renting. So I started fusing glass and crushing things up and mixing metal oxides. I just do things my own way.
Well, that's not a bad thing.
I've had a lot of disasters, but then I end up with my own thing.
Yeah, exactly, and that's how we learn too. From the mistakes that we make.
So there's no formal education. And welding, I learned in a night adult education program at the high school on Martha's Vineyard. A guy was teaching people how to weld on Monday nights, so I went for 6 of them, and next thing you know, I'm welding and spending years at a time working on sculptures. This is going to be a long haul, this one.
Now, this is a piece that you're doing for the City Hall in Fall River. It's a commemoration of the immigrant population here through the years.
It's about everybody. It's for everyone.
Everybody, exactly.
Which includes, I did an immigrant memorial.
We were all immigrants as we came.
Well, indigenous people were a little different.
Indigenous were, but if you go way back to the crossing in Siberia.
Right, okay, that's cool.
But
well, to honor really everyone's ancestors, this is what we're trying to do. I did the immigrant memorial in Plymouth, and that was really about people coming over 300 years after the Pilgrims, many different cultures and countries. And that was a quote by Peter Gomes of Harvard Divinity School. He grew up in Plymouth, and him and between himself and one of the city councilors, selectmen, they had this competition to use his quote. So I ended up winning that and building the Immigrant Memorial, which is with 6 heads and figures with the quote at the bottom. So here it is.
What is the quote at the bottom?
Oh God, that's a long one. It's long. But I have it on my website. The quote that I came up with for this one is about to the enduring memory of our ancestors who have enriched this land.
Right.
And then indigenous peoples, immigrants, the enslaved, and refugees. Together, their descendants and ancestors, their descendants, I forget how it goes exactly, will continue to build a strong and peaceful community. Because that's what we are.
That is what we are.
And so I'm really trying to have different ethnic diversity in the sculptures, and these are all hand-built out of stainless steel.
Now these are faces that will be part of this.
Yeah.
I think we have a picture, don't we, of the actual.
I'm going to be sending drawings of in progress, the original sketch, and also of the Immigrant Memorial, so you'll have a sense of the feeling
finality of it all.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But these are really all hand done. You can hold
beautiful
this up.
Pieces, yeah.
And then if you look at the back, you can see all the work. It's all hand done. There's no casting here.
No.
This is all directly welded, which I've been doing right along. It's just the way I work.
And mounted in the case here of on the wall, one of the kind of points, isn't it? An angle.
It's going to be right on the corner, and it's a slanted, raked back wall. It's actually a handicap ramp to get up to the level where you walk into the building. And so it's a perfect setting that's similar to my immigrant memorial, which I designed to be like this column, which is sense of the community.
Yeah.
And the whole column goes from a three-sided and twists into a four-sided sculpture, so it looks like it's leaning towards the future. That's what Peter Gomes said. I thought
beautiful thought.
Well, he's the one that said it. I thought it. He said you could look up there and see someone you know. That's what I want here. I want anyone that walks by this sculpture to say, "This is for my people."
Right.
Whether you're white, black. There's a Cambodian girl whose photograph I saw online, and I'm looking at that picture thinking, what a beautiful face. And that's what this one's fashioned after, with a little slanty nose, and then this one's like kind of
this is, I know,
Massasoit's nose, no question about it.
Yeah, Massasoit, who was here before all of us.
Had a serious nose on him.
Yeah.
I like that nose. Yeah.
And what are some of the others?
Well, there's not anyone in particular.
Just the generals.
Well, what I was looking at, we have a book group, and Zadie Smith was our book that we read, and my friend did the book, the author's
presentation,
talk. And he said, and when he came and saw my drawing, I had a wrapped head. He said, it looks just like Zadie Smith. And so he sent me the picture, and I Googled her name, and about 100 pictures came up, and that's what this one is fashioned with her head wrap. It's not quite done. I got to poof it up some more.
Right.
But she said, try to get the nose and the lips and the eyes are close together. And she's, is it her? It doesn't matter if it's her.
Doesn't matter.
But it's like she's mixed African descent and white from England. She lives in New York City, and she's a fabulous writer. And so it's not really her, but that's what I'm looking at to kind of get features. So just with the noses, you can see different shapes.
Different representations.
We don't want it to look exactly like anyone. It's not telling an exact story like Massasoit. I just figured he needs to be up at the top and in back. They were here first.
Right, yeah. Well, they were,
Yeah, very important. And we're not trying to say more than what I just said, is that we're honoring our ancestors.
Now, how did you come to do this this piece for Fall River?
Fall River.
Was it,
I was on Facebook with one of the city council persons, and he asked me to come in, Steve Camara, and we get along great.
Yeah.
And things have changed since then. That was 3 years ago. So I came in and I looked around, and we looked at the corner, and I did some drawings. And the way it really worked out was that there wasn't any money with the city, so we went to the business community, and one of my father's friends, Bernie Taradash, who is at Oppenheimer, ran into Steve Camara, and Steve said, you think you could get some money for Barney Zeitz to do a sculpture? And he went to Bay Coast Bank. And they talked, and then we got other banks, and then 2 foundations. So we're about 70%, and I'm on Facebook raising funds. And we got a bit to go. That's why I'm just going to spread it out over the next 9 months.
Right.
And not feel rushed, because I'm 69 years old. I don't feel like welding to the point where I drop every day. This is really physical work. It's very intense.
Well, it is, yeah.
Yeah, it's all hard stainless steel, and I figured out how to outsmart it, but I don't want it to overdo it. And there's no reason to, So that's how it happened.
Overall, you've had pretty good community support for it, which is wonderful. Saw the windows on Facebook that you did for Germany somewhat recently.
Yeah, I just finished.
Oh, they were fabulous.
That was a huge job. It took 4 years. They had almost no money. This is like, I don't know how all of a sudden I'm a fundraiser.
Church.
It's a church, former synagogue.
I was going to say,
it's really a loaded.
Yeah.
See, at the Kristallnacht, which is the night of broken glass, was the last night it was a synagogue.
Oh,
and it got trashed. It didn't
Where in Germany is that?
It's near Frankfurt in a small town called Flieden. It's about an hour and 15 minutes east of Frankfurt. So it's right in the heartland. And they didn't hear about me. There was a woman from Cambridge, Mass, who went to see where her father had been a child. And she met with the minister of this now church.
Right.
And it was really challenging meeting for her, to meet, see where her father had been a Jewish child.
I can imagine.
And he was bar mitzvahed in 1899 in that building. And this minister was only 40 at the time. It was like 6 years ago. He was in his mid-40s. And he was so moved to meet someone whose father, had been Jewish in his building, and they
Right.
had incorporated to be a church former synagogue. It's the only one in the world, because they were actually incorporated to blend
The two.
to honor, again,
Yeah.
we're honoring the past. And so he wrote to her a few months later saying they formed a committee and they wanted to find someone in America that could do stained glass windows to remember the Jewish population, and she found me. So it's really, these are very meaningful jobs for me, and I'm,
And those recollections in those stained glass windows are of Jewish life.
Well, what it is a shared prayer for peace. Aaron's priestly prayer, may God bless you and keep you. May God shine his light upon you and grant you peace. There's actually one other line in there about countenance, but I don't remember it perfectly.
Yeah, it's all right.
So I wrote it on the right side. There's 3 windows on the right in Hebrew, running through the landscape with this abstract mountain at the top, which is a symbol of spiritual, climbing, the mountain. And it says it in Hebrew with stars of David laying in the landscape, the prayer for peace. And on the left, it's in German with crosses, the same prayer. And they both reach towards the front and end
Beautiful.
in the symbols of the cup holding up the mountaintop. So it's ending in the word peace, which is shalom.
Well, we're hoping for that.
Well, yeah. And so it was very deep for everybody involved. We had a dedication. And I'll be going back. There's some damage that happened in
I was going
shipment.
to say
that was horrible.
Yeah, really. So just share just a little bit of that, and just so people would have an idea of the kind of things that an artist has to deal with beyond the work itself.
There were 4 big windows that I just cast the glass and I welded frames to show them in my studio. 2 frames, but there were 4 windows. So I would revolve them in and out as I built them. And I shipped just the glass to Germany, and this wonderful company there built the frames in zinc with thermal paint on the back and then my glass inserted on the front, and they went in beautifully. The last 2 windows, I welded my own stainless frames with the word shalom and Frieden, the words for peace, in the stainless steel, and backed it with red glass. So it was really powerful. The frames alone were really beautiful to look at. So, but when I shipped those 2 in a crate, it was some driver tried to move it himself. It was 400 pounds, 7 feet long and over 4 feet tall, and he never should have tried to move it alone. And he tried to lift it with a pallet jack, and it went over.
Oh, Lord.
And it cracked the backing glass. But it's still, this company in Germany, really, Glass Mallory Peters, they're in Paderborn. They're the nicest people. They said send them, and it was a month before I got there, and I hadn't slept in a month, so I was not in good shape. And they had fixed them up pretty well and put them into the church, and it looked really gorgeous. There's extra cracks that I will be replacing. We're going to rebuild one section, and I'm always welcome to stay at their apartments that they have at the studio.
So nice.
I've never seen such a great place. And if I ever get another big commission like that, I don't have the need at this point to build it myself. This took 4 years, and I helped do the fundraising. And it was really, they're set up. I could go stay there and cast the glass and do the art part, and they could do the laminating and the grinding and the gluing and the welding
it all together,
and
so
putting
to
it the
speak,
installation. So, I need to let go of control. Like, I couldn't deliver them myself.
No, of course not.
And in 46 years of working, I've never not delivered my own work and installed
really?
it. This is the first time.
Well, there you go.
So that's life. It was hard to get over it, and I did. I got over it, and now I'm working on this. This is way more durable.
Yes, yeah.
The stainless steel is
And a lot
indestructible.
easier to get to from the vineyard to Fall River.
That's right. I can come back and forth.
Yeah.
And, this is a great transition from doing a really big glass project to a really big stainless steel sculpture project. Both very meaningful to me, and I feel really lucky to get to do it.
Well, I think you are, and I think
Yeah.
that particularly in today's world where, at times the arts are sort of, and we're hoping that doesn't happen here, but they're put in the background at times. I've seen that in the course of my life,
Sure.
it sort of comes and goes. And they're such an important part of life.
If you look back in history, you see when they talk about civilization, they're always looking at artworks. That's what they show.
They show, of course. I know someone who
Yeah.
teaches here at the college, and that's exactly what he teaches history through.
Right.
Teaches history through art.
Yeah, because that's what, they didn't have photography until a mere 150 years ago.
Yeah.
Maybe it's 200, I don't know. But I'm trying to do things in the most hand-built way. Like you could make a face look very accurate with clay or wax or plasticine, and you get every little hair right on the mustache, and you hand it to a foundry, and it comes out perfect, but it's all the same color. There's no texture and quality. I mean, some people know how to do waxes and casting, so it has, there are people that make it look even really more special than just plain.
So how do
This
you
is all
do this?
directly
Yeah,
welded, so
yeah.
that I take rods of stainless and I create an armature, and I literally patch on pieces, and the eyes are just punched.
Which we can see in the back of these.
And you can see like the eyes are hammered into a form, and I drill a hole for the pupil, and I fill it with bronze from behind, and then I polish the front. I mean, everything's just so labor intensive. That's a good one to show, because the eyes are really, I cleaned them up pretty good. Let's see if we can get that. And you can see that one eye's a little more open. I mean, people contort in all different ways.
Well, they do.
Yeah, and you can see the pupil is bronze, and I patinaed the bronze.
You can see it right here.
Yeah. And
Beautiful.
it's heat treated, and then I polish for where I want the whites of the eyes. Now I might clean up a little bit more, like there's a little discoloration. Let me get on the right side, right over. No, this side. I got it reversed. I'll clean up a little bit, but I want this hand-hewn
Well,
look.
the weather's going to clean.
It won't change them too much,
No,
not really.
yeah.
I mean, you might end up getting
A little
some
bit here and
mildew,
there,
but
yeah.
it's not going to change the stainless. Like my immigrant memorial has been there for 19 years.
in
Plymouth, and that's right near the
Beautiful
ocean, so
piece.
that gets a
Oh.
little bit of golden discoloration, and I have to do a little bit of work on it, but the salt water is tough. But for the most part, I have things in my yard, like my osprey that'll have at the Narrows. It's been out for 8 years, and it's just perfect. I have made these little angels, and on my website, my Facebook page, I show them all the time, and I sell them. Double angels, like for weddings or anniversaries, and I'll have a whole board of those there, ospreys and angels.
Nice.
Yeah, and they're more affordable, and yeah, they'll be there. And I also have a small osprey sculpture that kind of spins in the wind. So I've done a bunch of those.
Now, is there anyone in the arts in particular, I would imagine within the fields that you work in, stained glass or sculpture or whatever it may be, is there anyone in particular that you've admired the work of?
I have to say,
sort of a mentor kind of.
Well, I wasn't alive at the same
No,
time, but
no.
there was a man named Julio Gonzalez who had a show at the Guggenheim, the one with the ramp in New York
I know
that
it.
spirals down,
Yeah.
and someone said, you need to go see this. At that point, it was the late 70s. I had only welded frames for my stained glass at that point, but he had, let's say it was like he died in 46, I think. So he was from Spain, but he ended up in Paris, and he was friends with Picasso. But he took rebar and generally, found metal objects, not so much objects, but just basic materials in steel, and and he did like an assemblage with that. And I looked at that show and I said, someday I'm going to do metal sculpture. But,
There you go.
And that was in '81 that I saw the show, and I didn't do my first sculpture, which was the Holocaust Memorial in Providence. I had done other things like furniture and frames and standing screens to hold glass, but my first sculpture was in 1992. That was like 12 years later.
And where is that in Providence?
In Providence, behind the Jewish Community Center. It's like 12 feet tall, and that's steel and bronze lettering. But then I went over to stainless, and this is the material that it's great. I love it. It's very durable. You don't have to worry about finishes so much. I mean, it might need to, let's say if you get a really damp season, it might end up with a little green on it. You can power wash it, come right off.
And you were talking about a young man, as we talk about continuing things, as you mentioned this sculptor that you saw in the 70s,
right,
on exhibit at the Guggenheim, and now you have a young man working with you. We were talking off camera.
He's been with me for 3 years. And he loves making knives. Him and his dad have a forge, and they were making knives, and he's worked with me for 3 years, and he's really learning how to weld stainless. So he helps with he's doing the armature for the arms.
Yeah.
And I'm still doing all the heads. And as we move forward to put the surface on, he'll forge the pieces and I'll fine tune them and do the texture, because this texture is like drawing. And the way that I would use the MIG welder is like the way I use a pen and ink, or the way I use charcoal. You know, I draw a line and I cut into it and rub into it. You can't do that with ink, but you can do it with charcoal. My charcoal drawings I'll have there as well, and a whole bunch of pen and inks, because I sketched, like I did one on the boat this morning coming over.
Yeah, I'm looking at these and I'm thinking so much of, you know, the idea of masks.
Well, absolutely.
And what masks mean, you know,
Yeah.
in life, and how we all sort of, most of the time, wear one of some sort or
Well, this
another.
one doesn't
you know,
have the eyes yet,
This
and you
is
certainly
so,
get it.
yeah, it's so, you know, just looking across the table at these, it's just so very interesting, the concept of, and then of course you go to theater, another one of the arts, and you know, it's just constantly coming up, all of this sort of melding together.
My wife does theater with both children and old people in nursing homes, and she does a Women in History thing with 6th and 8th graders and 3rd graders as well at different schools on the Vineyard. And at one point I did do a mask, and this one is more like mask-like, and they wore it and it had half a face and then a big wing coming off. And I think most people were scared of it. I should have been in that piece. They did because I knew how to hold it and not feel like I was going to hurt myself.
Right,
These things are heavy, you know, and they feel sharp.
Yeah.
You can smooth things out pretty well.
But
but the theater, the mask thing is really a big deal.
It is, yeah.
And you know, today I went to Mid-City Steel to look for some scrap, and all the guys love to see what I have in Westport.
Oh, Westport,
And so I went in, and all these guys were there. And I said, well, I got some heads. You want to see them? So they came to the trunk, and they're lying there like this, and they said, oh, they're amazing. But
I was going to say, I bet.
But they said, but it's kind of creepy. It's like you have people's heads in your trunk.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. Well, you know, but it really isn't, and it's. I mean, it must be amazing when they see what they have at Mid-City.
Oh yeah, they always get a kick out of me.
And then you know, you look at this, what it can become, and it's just, I mean, in the hands of the right person.
Yeah.
And it's just an amazing.
No,
blessing,
I love going
you know,
there.
It's a blessing.
I love going there. I've been dealing with them. I went to school with the owner like 50 and up to 60 years ago. You know, where we've known each other.
Who was that?
Louis Gitlin.
Gitlin, yeah.
Yeah,
big family from Fall River.
Well, yeah, I mean, there were
right?
two
The
brothers
Gitlins,
that started the business, and it was mostly scrap, and now they have new metal.
Yeah.
And he's been really supportive, and it's been
great.
great for me to go there. And I always know, and the scrap guys, you know, like I needed more of this rod, we used most of it up, and they had this huge spool of it. So they sliced off a huge chunk and threw it in the back of my car.
could have it.
And then I needed some more sheet, and especially for the hair. I needed a little thinner so I can really fold it and whack it and add onto it so it looks.
It begins to look.
This is
it
not
gets
hair. This
that-
is more like a headdress or head wrap.
Well, that's
this
what I
one.
was thinking. This is like you would wear around in a.
Well, that's what she did. She always had a head wrap on.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
it's really,
very, very, and of course in the, you know, this little, we'll put.
that
this-
was my
put this
technique I
as a
came
little
up with. The
focus here with the immigrant. I don't know if they can see that.
yeah, they
but
see it fine. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And that's all cut through plate.
Yeah.
And then what I do is I put on the back a plate. So I weld that on, and then I can get with a TIG welder. I can use silicon bronze and fill the gap. It's like a little cavity now, and I just like a wave run it over the edge of the stainless, because you can't put too much heat in the stainless, you would ruin the edge. And then I grind it down, so it's this big lumpy looking mess, and then you grind it and end up with a pretty accurate lettering. That's how I did the Immigrant Memorial and my Vietnam Memorial on Martha's Vineyard.
What is your favorite to date? I know I hate to say that in a
piece?
way,
I don't know.
piece or project, because I know artists will look at them as almost like children.
No, but that's what I'm
And so
saying.
what's your
I couldn't.
favorite?
I couldn't say I had a favorite child. That would be horrible.
No, but
No, doing this project in Germany was so deep, but
I was
it
gonna
went on
say,
for 4 years, and
yeah,
I was really
yeah.
tired because I went to this mountain thing 6 times. Okay, like I had to do, every window had a mountain top in it, and I had to undulate through the. So to spend 4 years looking at this image was like I was really ready for it to be done. Whereas
by the end, yeah.
Yeah, whereas this one, it'll be like a year, maybe a year and a quarter, maybe even a year and a half of working on it by the time it's done. But
But you know,
It's very linear. It's like one.
Well, the interesting thing too,
vision.
Bonnie, is as you know, as a native Fall Riverite myself,
Right.
is the idea that you really wonder if they had put out a competition and somebody had, you know, they had said artists, you know, decide on what you would do as some sort of a memorial in the city of Fall River and so forth. It hadn't been just conversation with somebody, but let's say they went through that process. You really wonder if anyone who wasn't from the area could have come up with this. I don't know.
I don't know. It just was meant to be this way.
Because it's I think you have to have a certain amount of knowledge about the area and a feeling for the area,
Right.
to really
Well, we talked about
pull that together.
Yeah.
That idea of you know what really makes particularly cities like, you know, more so than I think you'd find in the Midwest or the West or a lot of other places. You know, these cities in along the Northeast. I mean, they really were bastions of immigrant communities, and that's what they are.
No, I grew
this
up
day,
with Portuguese friends, Lebanese friends,
All of it.
Irish friends. And we had a Jewish community as well. But I had really
good size at
not
that
so
time.
much anymore. But I
No,
really
but yeah.
was very friendly with Portuguese people, and you know, I went to my reunion and I saw people that were ancestors from Lebanon, and I just think it's great.
It is.
I love it.
It is.
And I know there's a Cambodian population now.
Now
that
there,
happened later.
and we have some Latino too, and the more recent immigrant communities. You know,
Yeah, it means a lot to me, and I see Fall River as becoming, like New Bedford, a better place to be. You know, it's going to get more fixed up, and you know, it's got a beautiful position up on the hill.
Oh,
to
absolutely.
overlook the river. I mean, it's really
It's a little. I've always thought since the first time I visited San Francisco, I've always thought of it as a mini San Francisco that didn't ever reach that fruition. You
there's
know,
some nice architecture too.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, in the Highlands and certainly other places too. I think it's great. So I'd like to be part of whatever renaissance is coming.
Are. You are.
Yeah, this is going to be very unique. I mean, even though the Immigrant Memorial in Plymouth has this feeling, this is bigger, and it has this larger encompassing of people. This is about everybody.
Well, we want to invite the community to come and see your work, more of your work beyond what we've seen today at the Narrows Center for the Arts here in Fall River. The opening is April the 25th, and this is our own Barney Zeitz based in Martha's Vineyard from Fall River, and we thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
You're welcome. See you next time.